trickery. I don't really like it. Take that and slap it on a billboard. For real though, one of the worst things you can do to another person that trusts and believes in you is to backstab them while keeping it a secret until the last moment. Some of the best villains in media, like Crocodile and One Piece, have become icons for their master plans to gain high positions of power without the populace even knowing. The problem that arises comes from the fact that these characters are fiction, and the backstabber we're talking about today is very much real. This is Anton Cervetnik, a comic artist and animator from Estonia, otherwise known as Antunes. You may have heard of him recently online for exploits with an artist on Twitter called PuppyChan, and having a video made on them by Daft Pina. For anyone that doesn't know Antunes, he's an animator on YouTube with over 900k subs. He's best known for his Deathbed series, which are videos where characters are, well, on their deathbed. He also has somewhat of a problem with tracing many of the characters in his animations. When he does create original animations, they are actually pretty smooth and well done, but this video isn't to talk about his YouTube channel. This is about what he's deciding to do with his time off of YouTube, and more specifically on Twitter. After deciding to take a break from YouTube and make comics, Anton was quickly able to fit into a certain type of group, one including people that generally like to make fun of the left. Daft's video goes into more detail on the people involved in the group Anton joined, and how they sort of shaped him and his beliefs to be a little bit more radical, at least in comic form, but that isn't my main focus either. No, what really started getting me interested in Anton was when he got involved with an artist on Twitter called PuppyChan. For those who don't know PuppyChan, she's a non-binary person that basically goes by any pronouns. Kind of the perfect target for Anton considering the comics he's been creating. It all started when Anton was responding to someone and mentioned how they were weird for being trans and autistic. PuppyChan responded, and Antunes then responded to her by talking about a comic she made. For context, PuppyChan created a pretty harmless comic about a transgender character interacting with their grandfather. If you want to read it, I'll leave a link in the description and keep it on screen for a few seconds, but basically, Antunes made a tweet saying that kind of interaction between a trans character and their grandfather could only exist in fiction. PuppyChan responded to that saying Antunes doesn't really have room to talk with how his comics are mostly just shock related, and in a tweet below that, she said she was mad because of it being her time of the month. Now, up until this point, it was pretty much just another Twitter squabble, but this is the point where things kinda got out of hand. Antunes replied to this tweet specifically asking PuppyChan about whether she had transitioned or not, and honestly, I'm just gonna say this here, Antunes, guy, I know you're already watching this, you've probably already left a comment and have made a tweet about it, and I'm just gonna say this here, a 31-year-old man asking about a 17-year-old minor's period? Not a good look. Honestly, kind of a situation you wouldn't want to put yourself in. Alright, let's just assume he has no ill intent by asking this question, and I don't think he was trying to be creepy or anything. You still have to take into account PuppyChan never specifies in their bio or tweets if they're trans, so I can only assume Anton got this idea from the comic they made about a person being trans. There's also the fact that Antunes didn't need to respond to this specific bit at all to begin with. If he hadn't, the situation would have just been regular Twitter bickering, but with this tweet, people can easily and somewhat justifiably assume this 31-year-old man is creeping on the 17-year-old child after they mention something relating to their bits. PuppyChan brought this up in another response tweet to Antunes, and after that, he took a weird position in the entire drama. He decided to take the position of the victim. You see, Antunes tends to talk a big game and try to be the right-winger debunking all the libtards publicly, but if he gets called out for certain behaviors or fans of the people they mention go into his DMs, he starts getting all defensive. He's locked his Twitter account on various different occasions, and that doesn't really help when you have over 14k followers. It's also implied in many of Antunes' tweets about PuppyChan fans going in his DMs that she's the one that sicked her fans on him, but that really isn't the case. And okay, it wasn't implied, he flat out stated it, so I'm not taking him out of context. To be fair, some comments were more unnecessary than others, and some threatened doxing and such, which you should not do to any person unless they're like actually committing a crime. But you yourself link a video giving the quote-unquote true story, and in DMs with another user, they say you sent hate to them by mentioning them in a post, and you refute that. It's the same situation here. PuppyChan never explicitly said to go after you, Anton, and if her fans feel like you did something wrong and they want to message you, it still isn't her fault. A person should not be responsible for something their fan base does if they do not explicitly tell the fan base to do something. Don't go trying to say she was purposely trying to send hate towards you, and PuppyChan has stated that they've gotten plenty of messages as well. well. After this, the tension just sort of kept on rising until eventually they got to having a conversation. I'll get into the actual conversation they had soon enough, and I actually got an interview with Puppy-chan where they shared the conversation they had with Anton, so stay tuned for that. Another thing Antunes did as Daft Pina made a video going into his exploits and such was to find any other video discussing him and bring it to his Twitter to say, oh my god, so bad, like right guys? This guy is making fun of me and he sucks, right? He weirdly comes off as kind of desperate for attention by posting all these DMs and incredibly small videos by small YouTubers, but then again, that is a lot of Anton's brand now. He also mentions in tweets about Meat Canyon tracing, since Daft brought that up in his video about Anton, and Daft is friends with Meat Canyon, and yes, there are some instances of small tracings on his part in older videos. But not only does this not have anything to do with the situation, but as far as I can tell, the newest instance Antunes could find was still 7 months ago. That means while he did trace someone in the past, which is still bad and worth calling out, he doesn't do it at all currently, so it's kind of an invalid point aside from it not relating to the situation. These instances of Anton directing people's attention towards what he considered dumb hate comments and people that don't have anything to do with the situation are most likely just him trying to divert that attention away from himself for tracing, which he does much more obviously in his content and still seems to do as far as I can tell. From the interview between Daft and Anton, he gave the stance that tracing wasn't really that big of a deal at all, but I guess it was big enough of a deal to call out someone that doesn't do it anymore and barely did it to begin with. Back to the Puppy-chan debacle, it came to a head when Antunes posted about the game he was creating and that Puppy-chan was going to be in it as a boss character. What really makes this kind of creepy is he has the character, for one of their moves, this kind of pains me to say, he makes her shoot blood out as an attack, and that's just not excusable. How he could have possibly thought this would get him any positive feedback by animating this move is just beyond me. It isn't overly graphic or anything, but just doing this with a minor is pretty embarrassing and kinda cruel and kinda weird. Bringing up a bit from my interview with Puppy-chan, they said they were horrified and humiliated, and that's to be expected. Whether trans or not, this is incredibly humiliating to whomever the person is based off of. Another part about the whole situation to take into account is the trans accusation. It's a statement popularized by Anton that Puppy-chan is male to female trans, and therefore would not be able to do what she stated. This idea that Puppy-chan is transitioned was spread around, and while in the end, it's not an important detail here because he shouldn't really have felt a need to talk about this minor's area to begin with, in the interview I asked if Anton had spread any misconceptions about her, and she said he was most likely confused about their gender, as they had never transitioned and are indeed female at birth, though they identify as trans-masculine but go by any pronouns. To Anton's credit here, he didn't intentionally spread misinformation or anything, he genuinely didn't know. He was mostly just confused and upon realizing his mistake and getting an answer from Puppy, backed off about the whole thing. But that animation he did only becomes worse on his part and doesn't take away how degrading it is. And yes, Anton, I know that Puppy-chan said it's okay for you to keep it up for historical purposes, I'm still pointing it out. Moving on, Puppy-chan decided to message Antunes about the entire drama to maybe try and come to a conclusion about stopping the whole thing as they believed it had gotten out of hand. Looking at the conversation through messages I received from Puppy-chan, Anton comes off as just a regular guy that wasn't trying to do any harm. He exclaims that he didn't mean anything creepy by asking about their status, and that he doesn't actually hate anyone he talks about. There are also a few genuine misunderstandings between the two, such as Puppy-chan thinking Anton posted a picture of her to say she's ugly, and that helped elevate the situation further when both sides weren't even trying. He and Puppy-chan seem to have a decent understanding in DMs, and they agreed to put aside the drama on both sides and make peace. Usually this is where the story would end on a happy note of everyone becoming friends and both sides seeming more mature to each other, but not even a day later, literal hours after this happened, Daft had another update. He had a friend in the Antunes Discord server, and no, I could not find a way in myself, that shows a completely different story. In these screenshots, he describes Puppy-chan as having taken all responsibility for what happened despite giving a lousy apology, and that he wins because she DM'd him about taking down the video. I can't see how he thinks he's the winner in that scenario, as he just seemed to provoke her to the point she finally had to respond, but to each their own, I guess. That calm interaction with her was apparently a non-aggressive act, and that he would wait until she's 18 in a few months to quote-unquote fully go in on her. Something else I see here is a clear series of thought that Anton has, that being of using her. He sees Puppy-chan as a good source with a massive following that can be useful to him. These are his words words shown in DMs, not my interpretation. The phrase that baffles me the most in these screenshots, however, is when he says, "She's a valuable figure in this fight with the left." To me, this implies he was trying to subtly get her to endorse him and maybe become more right-wing. It's very confusing to say the least. He isn't saying it in a joking fashion, so I can only assume he wanted to use PuppyChan's massive influence on the platform to get more popular with the left-leaning side of Twitter, wait until she's 18 to quote, go all out on her, and then disassociate himself with her. My reason for specifically thinking this is because he says in the screenshots that he has no voice in the art community because on Twitter it's 99% LGBT/autistic, and therefore having PuppyChan would give him more of a voice. He's also been trying to make a case that PuppyChan isn't 17 and that instead she's an adult that's possibly grooming her underage fan base. His proof, well, she has a Ko-Fi, and you have to be 18 to have a Ko-Fi, so she must be over 18 because people never lie about their age on the internet. I was 8 when I got my first YouTube account back in 2012. I guess I just wasn't a dumb second grader back then who clicked the checkmark to say I was the right age. Oh, look at all these kids on the internet who say they look at porn. They must be all over age. The only other sort of attempt to disprove her age on Twitter is a picture he retweeted of one of those age by face tests that says she's 31. Not only are these kinds of sites already stupid and inaccurate, but to prove it, I took pictures of Finn Wolfhard and some TikTok star who are both 17, and the app said they were both 24. I, a 16-year-old, took the test and it said I looked 29. People can also just, look old, so needless to say, this is not evidence at all. Either that's the case, or I, Finn Wolfhard, and random TikTok star are all faking our ages, but I think we all know what the more likely answer is. Anton was also subtly trying to poke at her to get her full name and find out, but these Discord messages leaked before he could get a chance to do any real prodding around. One of the other reasons he was looking was to get the pedo accusations against him going down, and honestly, I don't think he is that. He showed no sexual attraction to PuppyChan at all, and I think it is a bit absurd to stretch like that. It doesn't clear him of what I'm talking about, obviously, but Twitter has taken this and made the accusations more serious than they needed to be. I'm still not on his side by any means. The final question I want to pose in this video is, who truly is Antunes? To people like PuppyChan and in Daft's interview, he acts pretty amicably and doesn't seem like a threat in any way. He's willing to call trans women and men by their preferred pronouns and such, he talks casually to them, and he doesn't come off as having any malintent. In other circles and on Twitter, though, he has an attitude of being more far to the right. He says that certain people can help in the fight against the left, whatever that means. He tries to constantly give off the attitude of not caring about the left while constantly responding to them and commenting on videos. He seems to have either a really radical viewpoint on certain topics, or he's just making really dark jokes that are sometimes hard to tell if they're serious or not, and depending on his persona and what social group, he leans towards one side or the other. At the end of the day, do I think Antunes is a transphobe and racist? At the moment, I'm leaning towards no and just sort of thinking he's an edgelord with a very dark sense of humor, but it could lean the other way possibly because it's very hard to tell. Do I think that he is a map? No, definitely not. Do I think he deserves to have constant spam and threats of being doxxed/fired? No. Do I think that he's a bit of a backstabber, a flip-flopper, and kind of a shitty person? Yeah, pretty much. Both he and PuppyChan acknowledge that she is kind of naive and very trusting of people, and he kind of took advantage of that, which is pretty shitty. But even still, I got an interview with PuppyChan, and at the end I asked if she had anything she wanted to say to Anton, and I'll leave this video with the words that she said. I want him to be a better person. Thanks for watching, I'll see you all in the next video, and thanks to PuppyChan for letting me interview them. Bye.